We continue now at the top of Daf Nun Hey Amud Aleph and Mesechet Kesuvos. This is Kesuvos Daf 55a. The Gemara here is continuing to enumerate the nafkaminas when we say that the Tosefes Ksuba, any additional money that he provides for her in the Ksuba, is the same as the actual Ksuba money. In other words, the 100 and the 200 that is generally written in the Ksuba, that is the same status as any additional money that he promises her. Let's say she becomes a widow, or let's say he divorces her. So that makes a nafkamina in the following cases as well. L'shevach, when it comes to improvement, Rashi over here says, L'shevach she'amru bebechoros eina bechor notel pishnayim b'shevach sheshivchu hanechosim la'achar misas aviyim. Let's say you have a situation where a father dies, and so then his property goes up in value after he dies. There's a general halacha that the bechor gets double. He does not get double of that stuff which improved after the death of the father. And that same thing is true by the woman, by the ksuba. So the same thing by the woman when she collects her ksuba, she doesn't get that improvement. Also the additional part, it's not only the actual 100 or 200 of the ksuba, but even any additional money that's in the ksuba contract, she will not collect if it was just improvement that took place after the death of her husband. Another nafkamina is l'shvua. When it comes to an oath, Rashi over here says, l'chol mili d'shaycha l'shava ala ksuba. There are numerous things where she has to swear in order to collect the ksuba. Kagon hanefrash lo befana, for example. Let's say she's getting paid and he's not present. V'ed echad miida she prua. Let's say there's one aid that says it was already paid, and so she has to take an oath. V'hanefras minachasim mishubadim. Let's say she's trying to collect from property that had a lien on it, u'minechsei yisomim, or from the property of the orphans. The Tanan bePerak HaKosev the bo shvu. We said in Perak HaKosev in the Mishnah that all those cases require her to take an oath. Af tosefes nami bo shvu. And the point is that also when it comes to the additional, she needs to take a shvua. Rashi over here says, "V'afagav de pogemis b'hai klola ise." Now, even though pogemis, which was already listed before, that should all be included in this. So itzrich leminkate behedya lashminan de pegimas tosefes mahanya lahashbiya kepegimas kesuba. So there we want to list pogemis separately to say, even if she is pogemis, even if she says, let's say that it was already paid, part of it was already paid when it comes to the tosefes, that is the same status, and that makes it that she has to take an oath, just like the actual ksuba. So there's a slight variation in the case of pogemis, and that's why it is listed separately. And the Gemara continues, V'lashvias, another nafkaminas when it comes to the Shemitah year. Rashi says, She'ein shvias mishametes ksuba. Shvias, even though it cancels loans, it does not cancel a ksuba. Keshar shtaros like others, elam kain pagma v'zakfa, except again with the exception, let's say you have a situation where they converted the ksuba into a regular loan. Kedaminim Mesechet Gittin, that's mentioned in Mesechet Gittin. But Tosefes nami lo meshamet. So again, the point is, the Tosefes is the same as the ksuba. The Shemitah will not cancel the Tosefes, just like it does not cancel the regular part of the ksuba. Well, the Chosiv called nechas of Levanov, and also let's say a person writes over all of his property to his sons. This we mentioned briefly earlier. Rashi over here explains, Lechosiv nechasav Levanov v'chasav l'ishto karka kolshu. The halacha is, if a person gives all of his property over to his sons, but gives his wife a little karka of the ksuba, so she actually loses out on her ksuba, that becomes her ksuba, kedisa b'yesh nochelin, that's a halacha in yesh nochelin, v'tosefes k'ksuba, and the point is that the additional part of the ksuba has the same status as the ksuba itself in this regard. And the Gemara continues, Ligvos min hakarka, and other differences in terms of collecting from karka. Rashi over here says, In ksuva nigvas ela min hakarka. The halach is a ksuba is collected only from land. Umin haziboris, and it's also from the inferior kind of land. Kedetanan b'hanizakin, that's what it says in Hanizakin and Gittin. V'chein tosefes, and again the same thing applies when it comes to the tosefes of the ksuba. Umin haziboris, like Rashi just said, it is from the inferior land that the ksuba and the tosefes ksuba is collected. V'chol zman shehi beveis aviyah, also the halacha that applies, let's say she's in the house of her father. Rashi over here says, calls manshi beveis avia tanan b'hanose. We learn in the Mishnah in Hanose, that's later on, calls manshi beveis ba'alo b'meshech al manusa. If she's in the house of her husband while she's a widow, so gova ksubas liolam, so that can go on forever and she can always collect the ksuba. The calls manshi beveis avia. Now, if she's in the house of her father and not in the house of her husband, shalo ayu ovdemosa hayisom and velo zaranosa. They're not supporting her. The orphans are not supporting her and they're not serving her. So gova ksubas ad chafei shanim. Then she only gets 25 years to collect the ksuba. V'imshazka yeser al ken yom. If she's quiet even one day more than 25 years, she doesn't collect, she then is considered to have been mochel or ksuba, and the same is true when it comes to the tosefes. Finally, the Gemara says, v'lechsubas bin indichrin, and other differences by the ksubas bin indichrin. Again, that's in a situation where the ksuba goes, so even though normally a person dies, so all of his sons inherit equally, but we say that if it's part of the ksuba, so they get the sons of that particular mother, whoever's ksuba it is, they're going to get the full amount of that ksuba, including the dowry. dowry. So Rashi over here says, Ksubas ben indichron kashem shenotlim nedunyas avi imam, just like they take the dowry that was given by the father of their mother, by their grandfather, given to their mother, they get the whole thing. That doesn't get divided with all of the sons of this individual who dies. Umanu Masayim Kachnol and Tosefes. Not only do they take the dowry, they take the 100 or the 200, and they also take the Tosefes. All of that is inherited. Again, the point is, the Tosefes is considered the same as the 100 and the 200. And the Gemara continues, Itzmar, we have the following Machlokas Amoraim, Ksubas ben Indichrin, the part of the Ksuba that goes to her sons. Again, let's say she dies, it's inherited by her husband, and then it doesn't go to all of his sons, rather it goes specifically to her sons. Let's say he's married to multiple women. So that part of the Ksuba that goes to them, Pumbedisa Amri and Pumbedisa, they say, Lo tarfami mishavdi, they can't collect that from liened property. Let's say there was property that was sold off, that they can't collect, because yirsun tanan, because the language is, it says they are going to inherit. By inheritance, you don't collect from the chasim mishubadim. However, b'nei masa mechasya amri, the people of masa mechasya, they say tarfami mishavdi, that they are allowed to collect from the chasim mishubadim, because yisvun tanan, the way to read it is, yisvun, they will take. That implies like a balchov, like somebody who's collecting a debt. When you collect a debt, you can even collect from liened property, you can even collect from the chasim mishubadim. Behilchasan, the Gemara comments, the halach is lo tarfami mishavdi, they cannot collect from the chasim mishubadim yirsun tanan, because the way that we learn the text is yirsun. Metaltali v'isnu beinayu. Now let's say there was metaltal and movable property that was designated, it's in front of us, it hasn't been changed at all, it hasn't been lost at all, and that was designated for the ksuba, so that she can collect below shvua, she can collect it without an oath. But lesnu beinayu, let's say it's not in front of us, it was lost, so pumbedisa amri and pumbedisa, they say below shvua, she collects it without an oath. But masa mechasya amri, the people of masa mechasya, they say b'shvua she has to collect it with an oath. V'hilchasa below shvua, the halach is she collects it without an oath. Yichad lo ara, let's say he designates for her land that's going to be for the collection of the ksuba. Bi'arba mitzrina, if he designates it, and he designates it on all four sides, clearly demarcating exactly where the boundaries are below shvua, so then she can collect without an oath. B'chad mitzra, but let's say he only demarcates at one area, so pumbedisa amri and pumbedisa, they say below shvua, she collects without a shvua. B'nei masa mechasya amri, the people of masa mechasya, they say b'shvua, that she collects with a shvua. V'hilchasa, and halacha is below shvua, she collects without a shvua. And the Gemara continues, Amar la'edim, let's say a person says to Edim, Kismu v'chismu, write a contract, sign the contract, v'havule, and you're going to give a gift to this particular individual with this contract. So kanu minei, if they make an acquisition, let's say these Edim, they act almost like a shliach for the recipient, and they make an acquisition on this property, so lo tzarechim luchebe, so then they don't have to go back and consult with him and make sure he really intends on giving it, because they've already made a kinyan, the deal is already finished. But lo kanu minei, but if they didn't actually make a kinyan, so pumbedisa amri and pumbedisa, they say lo tzarechim luchebe, they don't have to go consult with him again at the time of the giving. But masa mechasya amri, the people of masa mechasya, they say tzarechim luchebe, they do have to go consult. V'hilchasa, and the halach is tzarechim luchebe, they do have to consult. And Rashi over here explains metaltali v'isnu beinayu, again you designate for the ksuba metaltalin, and they're right in front of us. Hamiyachin metaltalin the ksubas ishto, somebody designates metaltalin, that's going to be used to pay the ksuba of his wife, a mason, he dies. V'hein be'ein, and they're right in front of us. Nifras mehen, and she's collecting them. No, it's lasan below shvua. She could take it without an oath. The time of my Amar Rabbanan minich say yisomin lo tifra la b'shvua. Because why do the Rabbanan say when she takes from the property the orphans she can't take without an oath? The chayshinan dilma tzrari atfasa, we're afraid that there was something that was set aside for her. V'hacha hainu tzrari datfasa, but here we see what was set aside. This was set aside, and therefore she takes it. Lesnu beinayu, if it's not in front of us, kagon shavdu, it got lost. So then below shvua, one opinion is without an oath. To kavan da'avat, since it's lost, hani da'avat hani lo atfasa achrini. Once these are lost, there's not something else that's been set aside. V'chol nechasav achron l'chsubasa, all of his property is going to be, there's like a lien on all of his property for the ksuba, meaning to say it's all responsible, and she can collect from his property, v'nifras mina karkos, and she can collect from the karka, from the land. Bi'arba mitzrano, again, let's say he demarcated all four sides of the property, sheyichid la karka, he designated land for the ksuba, v'chasav la ba'arba ha-mitzarim shala b'chayev la asosa apotiki l'ksubasa, he said exactly what the land is, and that was during his lifetime. This is going to be used for the ksuba. V'meis, he dies, nifras heimena below shvua, she takes it without a shvua. Devadaisu lo mitzvah slot tzarei achrini. Once we see such a designation like that, there's clearly nothing else that was given to her. This is for the ksuba. B'shvua, but let's say you have a situation where it wasn't demarcated like that, then she has to take an oath. Why? Dekeven de lo chasav la'arba ha-mitzarim, since he didn't write out exactly the boundaries. Ein zu smicha lismach aleh, this is not reliable. V'arei hika mishal lo yichid, it's as if nothing was designated. V'ikol mechash litzrara, we have to be concerned that there was something that was set aside that she was able to take, and therefore, again, she has to take it with a shvua. She has to take an oath that she wasn't yet already paid for the ksuba. Amar le'edim kisvu v'chismu kegon madnas karka. Guy's giving away karka. He tells Edim to write up a shtar and to sign the shtar. So lo tzarich lemluche be. If they already made a kinyan, you don't need to consult him. Adayin omid b'diburo. You don't have to see, does he still want to give it away? Sheyichtavu lo dekevan tekanu mimenu. Since they did a kinyan, stam kinyan l'chsiva omid. Once you make a kinyan, it's understood that this is meant to be written out, to be written as a shtar, and therefore the deal is considered finished. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah v'chulu. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, he made a distinction. He said if you have a situation where the ksuba is being paid after the nisuin, so then she receives the ksuba money, the base amount, the 100 or 200, plus anything additional. But let's say the husband died after the erusin, they hadn't yet gotten married, there was only a betrothal. So in that situation, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah made a distinction, and he said she only gets the base amount, she only gets the 100 or the 200, she does not get the additional. And the Gemara says, Itmar, we have the following machlokas amoraim, Rav and Rabbi Nosson. It's a machlokas between Rav and Rabbi Nosson. Chad Amar, one of them says, halachic Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. The halacha is like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. We do make a distinction between erusin and nisuin. The Chad Amar ein halachic Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. And the other one says, we do not make a distinction. The halacha is not like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. No distinction between erusin and nisuin. And the Gemara says, Tistayim Rabbi Nosson, hu damar halachic Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Let us conclude that Rabbi Nosson is the one who says the halacha is like Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, that we do make the distinction because we assume a person did not intend to give that extra money if all there was an erusin. To Shamina Leila Rabbi Nosson, because we've heard from Rabbi Nosson in another context, the Azal Basar Umdana, that he goes after what we would estimate would be the person's thinking. Most likely the person is thinking he doesn't want to give that extra money by erusin, and we see in other situations that Rabbi Nosson says that we follow what the person is most likely thinking. The Yomer Rabbi Nosson, because Rabbi Nosson said halacha Rabbi Shimon Shazuri b'mesukan. The halacha is like Rabbi Shimon Shazuri in a situation of somebody who is in danger of his life. Rashi over here explains, Basar umdana omet hadas, we go by what we think the person is thinking. B'davar sheina mefurish, let's say something is not explained explicitly. Omdin bezdin v'yomrim staminish lachei chavin. Bezdin can say, most people think this way. The lo chosev lavimono chinam al chibas bia. He's not giving away all of his money for no reason. He's doing it assuming there's going to be nisuin over here. If there's no nisuin, he's not going to give the extra money. And for example, this case, b'mesukan, by a case of danger, b'mesechet skitin ha'meforish v'ayotze b'shayara, it's talking about somebody's in danger, somebody's, let's say, traveling. V'yomer kisvu get lishti, he says, write a get for my wife. Ava b'shalo amar tenu, even though he doesn't say give the get, hareelu yichtavu v'yitnu, we can assume that he wants it written and given. T'machmas tirdaso shubol al nafsho, since he's concerned with his life. So lo hispik ligmor davar, if he just didn't finish saying what he wanted to say, but he means to say to give it, and we can estimate what it is that he means to say. Umeikara lichtavu even from the beginning, he meant to write it and to give it. Rabbi Shimon Shazuri says, Af ha-mesukan hagos, says even somebody who's in danger of his life, like he's ill and he's going to die. V'hainu basar omdan die, the same basic idea. You're following what the person is thinking. He's only saying kisvu because he wants to give it. Since he's in danger over here, he's not trying to play around over here. He's intending on divorcing her. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Nun Hey Amud Beis.